coronavirus case average is lower than all but 2 states. Southwest has dropped its plan to put unvaccinated staff on unpaid leave starting in December, staff pushing back. Also, one of the NBA stars is refusing to get vaccinated. And New York, where he plays, requires him to be vaccinated. There's no league mandate, but the commissioner says he wishes there were. Nearly 100 unvaccinated staff at Yale New Haven Health will lose their jobs. Also, Ted Cruz is proposing that, we drop off some of these illegal aliens in rich areas like Delaware, Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, where the Obamas live. Not sure how that's going to be received on the left. All of that and more, 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. But first, Dennis Prager, our beloved talk show host here at Salem Radio, says he and his wife have both contracted coronavirus, that he did not get vaccinated, felt that getting a natural immunity would be stronger than the vaccine. Here is what Dennis Prager said just the other day.
I say, particularly wonderful to be with you today. I missed Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday because I tested positive for COVID. I am broadcasting from my home as I am in quarantine, not going into the office while testing positive for COVID. My symptoms were at their worst with regard to chills, very feverish. I didn't have a lot of fever at all. I didn't have over 99 at any time, in fact, but a great deal of chills, which was uncomfortable, teeth chattering, etc. Let's see, what else? I can't remember. What else did I have? That was pretty much it. And what is important for me to tell you is that I believe that what I had decided to do over the course of the last year and a half, I believe has been justified. I wanted to achieve natural immunity, which is by far the more robust immunity that one can have against COVID or any virus.
If you are just now tuning in, no, this is not the Dennis Prager Show. This is the Larry Elder Show. I'm playing a segment from Dennis's show on Monday in which he announced that he's being quarantined, self-quarantined, because he has contracted the coronavirus, as has his wife, Susan.
As Marty McCary, professor, Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, and the Bloomberg School of Public Health, and the editor-in-chief of MedPage Today, wrote in the Washington Post, natural immunity to COVID is powerful. Policymakers seem afraid to say so. More than 15 studies have demonstrated the power of immunity acquired by previously having the virus. A 700,000 person study from Israel 2 weeks ago, this is a few months ago, found that those who had experienced prior infections were 27 times less likely to get a second symptomatic COVID infection than those who were vaccinated. Did you hear that? 700,000 person study in Israel, 27 times less likely than vaccinated people to get reinfected. This affirmed a June Cleveland Clinic study of healthcare workers in which none who had previously tested positive for the coronavirus got reinfected. The study authors concluded that individuals who have had SARS-CoV-2 infection are unlikely to benefit from COVID-19 vaccination. And in May, a Washington University study found that even a mild COVID infection resulted in long-lasting immunity. So I have wanted to have that the entire time. And what I did was I took therapeutics, specifically hydroxychloroquine and zinc, and ivermectin. Ivermectin beginning last November, and hydroxychloroquine beginning last spring, very shortly after the virus was diagnosed. And I hugged strangers in the thousands, literally in the thousands, while not being inoculated. And it was a gamble based on knowledge, not based on being a gambler. I am not a gambler, and I certainly don't gamble with my health. But I so believe science, and the science of ivermectin, not the lies of the New York Times. The New York Times would wish you dead rather than take ivermectin. And so would the Biden administration, and so would the CDC. They're corrupt beyond words. The number of Americans who are dead because of the opposition to therapeutics is one of the scandals in the history of this country. I think I am a living example of how effective taking these therapeutics is. I am not young. I admit I am healthy otherwise, but I am in the category of people who should be most concerned theoretically, and I am concerned. That's why I've been taking all these therapeutics. I have hugged thousands of strangers, as I noted, at rallies around the country. I have posed for photos with strangers in the thousands at speeches. And finally, I got it from somebody. And that's the story. And I also took the Regeneron, the monoclonal injection, where you're given antibodies from the plasma of a person who has had it. President Trump had it. Biden has made it almost impossible for people to get it because the man is evil. I've never said that of any president. I truly believe that Joe Biden is an evil human being.
We're going to break right there, finish up the segment when we come back. Also, 3 Pfizer scientists were caught undercover, Project Veritas, all admitting just what Dennis said, that natural immunity is stronger than the vaccines. Also, the AG of Nebraska says doctors can prescribe ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine off-label, despite what the medical professionals are saying. And some workers want COVID-19 recovery accepted as evidence of immunity. I'm Larry Elder.
How 1 million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans.
Go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
You can stop an earthquake. Doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Judge Thomas, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do.
I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. he has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
57 Muslim states in the world, one Jewish state.
Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
There's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
This is why we're fighting for the soul of America.
You should be able to share ideas without fear of being fired from your job or shouted down.
You are not to be heard. This is one of the few things we have no precedent for in the United States.
You have the right to remain silent.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
There's no doubt about it. America is in the middle of a culture war. The battle between left and right is real. One side believes in American greatness. The other wants to tear it down. The Salem Radio Network and the Salem Podcast Network is looking for a few warriors who are already fighting this war. This is your chance to nominate a person worthy of the honor of being Salem's Culture Warrior of 2021. Go to this show's website and click on the banner. Help us select Salem's Culture Warrior of the Year. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Boy, the state of Florida just fined Leon County $3.5 million because they fired 14 employees.
Coercion is just totally wrong. I think it's destroying trust in public health to the extent that there was still trust left over after all the stuff that's been done. But I think it's really, really negative, and I think you're going to end up driving people away.
You know, Governor DeSantis makes a great observation about the way the mandate is driving people in the other direction. And that's why companies have got to stop the mandates. This just has to stop. This isn't working. You cannot fire people over a vaccine.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Hi, Larry Elder. I am a firefighter with the Los Angeles City Fire Department. It's good to hear your voice back on the air. And I'm with a large group of firefighters, paramedics, captains, chiefs, engineers, AOs, inspectors who are against the city's mandate, along with other city workers. We have a rally and a meeting tomorrow in front of City Hall. Wanted to get this information out. It starts at 11, goes till 1 o'clock. It'd be great if you could get this on the air, just to let people know, come on down, support us, and the mandates that the city are forcing us with. Thank you very much.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. Now, you've all helped build MyPillow into the amazing company it is today. Mike has an amazing offer for my listeners. On his standard MyPillows, you will receive a standard MyPillow, regularly $69.98, now only $19.98. You'll also receive deep discounts on all MyPillow products, such as MyPillow towels, mattress topper, My Slippers, and so much more. Just go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener square to receive Mike's standard MyPillow for just $19.98, or call 800-890-1843. Be sure and use promo code Larry. MyPillow is made right here in the country, so we're not going to have supply chain problems. Comes with a 10-year warranty. You know it's going to last, and a 60-day money-back guarantee, so you've got nothing to lose. It's time to start getting the quality sleep we not only need and want, but have to have. So go to mypillow.com or call 800-890-1843. Again, be sure and use promo code Larry to take advantage of Mike's special offer on his standard MyPillow. That's mypillow.com, promo code Larry, or call 800-890-1843. That's 800-890-1843. Back to Dennis' segment on Monday in which he announced he had contracted the coronavirus, as has his wife, Susan.
I think he's corrupt. I think that the entire CDC and FDA is corrupt. I think Fauci is corrupt. And I staked my own health on my understanding of how corrupt they are. But doctors have called this show to call ivermectin a horse dewormer. There's a special place in hell for doctors who have dismissed ivermectin, so I don't really care what they do on my show. I do believe they will answer to a good God, because if anybody should know better, it is doctors. For doctors to believe the New York Times rather than science is a scandal of tremendous proportions. But that's the way the New York Times wants to describe something created for human beings and for which there was a Nobel Prize in medicine given, namely ivermectin. But it doesn't follow CDC protocol. The automaton doctors who exist in this country, who don't know a damn thing about the protocols of therapeutics, and just like a herd follow the CDC and the president and the left. So here I am, and here is what I would say. If you're not prepared to take the protocols and take care of yourself the way my wife and I did, then you are leaving yourself exposed, and then there may be an argument for you to take to get vaccinated. There's no argument for young people to get vaccinated. None whatsoever. But if you have comorbidities or of a certain age, and you are not prepared to take the therapeutics, you should consider taking the vaccine. That would be my position. It can hurt you. I know people it has hurt. It can also help. It's somewhat of a crapshoot. But I don't want you to take nothing. That is my story at this moment. Talk show host who is not inoculated gets COVID and is fine. And not fine because of luck, but is fine because of therapeutics.
Now that was Dennis Prager on Monday. I have since written him and checking in with him, find out how he's doing. Now for me, I have had the Pfizer vaccine. My doctor strongly advised that I get it because of underlying so-called comorbidities. I've got high blood pressure. I've also got a very unusual blood condition. It's called a JAK2 mutation. And I also had the booster shot on Monday, although I am not all that convinced that it's going to do very much good, but I couldn't see much downside to it. Now, regarding calling ivermectin a dewormer, Joe Rogan has, I think, the most popular podcast in the country, and Dr. Sanjay Gupta of CNN was on. Rogan, like Dennis, contracted the coronavirus. Rogan, like Dennis, had never been vaccinated, and Rogan, like Dennis, had taken ivermectin. And Rogan was not happy that when CNN learned that Rogan, was taking ivermectin, they referred to it as a dewormer. Here's what happened.
Horse dewormer's not a flattering thing. I get that.
It's a lie. It's a lie on a news network, and it's a lie that's a willing. That's a lie that they're conscious of. It's not a mistake.
Yeah.
They're unfavorably framing it as veterinary medicine.
Well, the FDA put this thing out. You saw that. Did you see that thing that the FDA put out?
What did the FDA put out?
It was a tweet, and it was snarky. I admit it. They said, "You are not a horse, you are not a cow, stop taking this stuff," or something like that.
Why would you say that when you're talking about a drug that's been given out to billions and billions of people, a drug that was responsible for one of the inventors of it making the
Nobel Prize
in 2015?
Yeah.
Yeah, a drug that has been shown to stop viral replication in vitro. You know that, right? Why would they lie and say that's horse dewormer? I can afford people medicine, mother. This is ridiculous. It's just a lie.
I don't think anyone is thick.
But don't you think that a lie like that is dangerous on a news network when you know that they know they're lying? You know that they know that I took medicine, like, here it is. This is ivermectin.
You got it
right here. Somebody gave it to me.
All right, hang on. The thing is, we're like going so fast. Like I feel like I'm missing.
Do you think that's a problem, that your news network lies?
Well, I don't.
Dude,
what did they say?
They lied
What did
and
they
said
say?
I was taking horse dewormer. First of all, it was prescribed to me by a doctor.
Yeah.
Along
They
with
shouldn't have said
a
it was
bunch of other medications.
If you got a human pill, because there were people that were taking the veterinary medication, and you're not, obviously. You got it from a doctor, so that it shouldn't be called that. Ivermectin can be a very effective medication for parasitic disease, and as you say, it's probably, I think, 250 million people have taken it around the world.
So Sanjay Gupta admits it should not have been called a horse dewormer. We come back. Project Veritas has 3 Pfizer scientists undercover saying natural immunity is stronger than the vaccine. I'm Larry Elder.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
It's like a ripple throughout society. We've got Dr. Fauci hectoring everybody who's had COVID who didn't get a vaccination, even though they have immunity. But I'm talking about not the people who refuse to be vaccinated, but the people who've had it and yet we have 2 million people scheduled to come across the border in the fiscal year, and he's absolutely silent about it.
That's right.
He can't even utter the word.
Well, it's like the silence of the unmasked demonstrators. And the medical profession said that's fine because it's
all 1,200 of them. I remember that well.
That's right.
And it's so what we're doing is we're creating not just exemptions for illegal aliens, but we're elevating them in some sense. We're not asking them to follow the law. We're not asking
right.
them to
So I want to know the
vaccinated.
original sin here. Is the original sin Ted Kennedy? Is the original sin the inability of the World War II generation to pass on American values? What's the original sin?
I think it's 2 things. It was the affluence and the leisure created by the 6%, just enormous affluence that was created, 6% a year GDP in the 50s and 60s, and we created the most leisured and affluent society, and it created certain expectations about human nature that create a guy like Ted Kennedy and create his idea that we're so wealthy, we're so powerful, we're so liberal, we're so wonderful that we're going to extend this and feel so good about ourselves and start deliberately having a policy where we don't apply the old rules of assimilation, integration, or border enforcement.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
To hear the White House press secretary blame Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott and other Republican governors for playing politics by trying to preserve jobs, not let people get fired over the vaccine mandate. What's the political gain for a governor to stand up to a tyrannical machine and say, You're not going to fire people because they don't want to put a medicine in their arm. You can't try to draw that line in the sand and say, well, the government shouldn't do it, but businesses can. We're either going to fire people over a personal medical decision or we're not. You're splitting hairs when you say, well, now the government, Gary Kelly flat out said, we don't want to do this at Southwest Airlines. He knows that this is a work stoppage. What's happened in Southwest, it isn't weather. They're not having any computer glitches. They got people working who aren't going to show up, and they're going to try to send Southwest a message. And Gary Kelly, the CEO of Southwest, admitted it by saying, we don't want this. Biden's making us do it. The government's making us do it. These zealots in charge, the kind of tyrannical governors we saw putting lines into Home Depot, and you can go to the garden section, but you can't go to the towel section, and all this crap. Put a mask on to walk to your table and take the mask off when you sit at the table. Like you can't spread COVID at the table, but you can when you're walking to the men's room. Are you kidding me? Would you stop it? And worst of all, forcing people to take a vaccine or get fired.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Hey, Larry, welcome back. Like I told you before, when you left to go run for governor, we're going to get your clock cleaned. You did. Now you're back. Now, see if you'll talk about the real issues, like Texas, bill in Texas not getting out of the Senate and the legislature to stop mandates. Oh, all of a sudden businesses like mandates. Oh my, what a shock. Yeah, see, so now talk about that in Texas and in Arkansas, where the governor of Arkansas was supporting mandates by guess who? Walmart and Tyson. Oh, two of their biggest employers. Of course they want mandates because those companies want to make sure that they can run. So talk about that issue instead of this freedom nonsense that you Republicans keep espousing, which is phony. Peace.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. I guess I'm not in the will. If the gentleman is still listening to the program, I'm here from 3 to 6 p.m. Pacific Coast time, Monday through Friday. You can always call during the show if you want to have a conversation. I'm happy to. But notice the venom, the vitriol. We're trying to figure out exactly how to navigate ourselves through this very serious pandemic. And if businesses want to impose mandates on their employees, they can do that. I would not do it. I would not recommend it. But businesses are doing that. And I believe that the state, in certain circumstances, does have the power to mandate that their employees be vaccinated. It's going to be litigated in court. My suspicion is it's going to be a very close ruling in the Supreme Court, but very likely the Supreme Court is going to rule that government does, in fact, have the power to do that. I don't think it's wise. I think freedom is valuable, and I think that we ought to allow individuals to make their own decisions. And when I hear this stuff about, well, Colin Powell died at the age of 84 because of coronavirus complications, let's remember he was suffering from Parkinson's. He was also dealing with cancer and was a cancer survivor. And what I hear, especially on places like CNN, is that, well, you're getting vaccinated doesn't just protect you, it protects other people, and therefore you have a moral obligation to do it. But even when you're vaccinated, you can still have the coronavirus and presumably still give it to others, as has happened. So it seems to me there's no perfect solution here. Now, what I find interesting is this glee that the gentleman had with businesses imposing mandates. Why would that make you gleeful? Is it your assertion that only if we have mandates for everybody in our society will we be free from this pandemic? Is that your assertion? I was interviewed during the campaign by CNN, and I was asked about vaccines for children. And I said the science suggests that children are not likely to contract the coronavirus, not likely to get very sick, certainly not likely to be hospitalized, and highly, highly unlikely to die. And they played that segment on CNN. They didn't edit it, to their credit, but then they promptly said that Elder was wrong. Elder's not wrong, not based on a number of scientists whom I respect, one of whom is Marty McClary, the doctor to whom Dennis referred, who is at Johns Hopkins, a medical facility that I thought, respected. And the idea that I am anti-vaccine, which is what I was accused of by one commercial that they ran on radio, is a lie. I've talked about people who are in high-risk categories, that they ought to, with the consultation of their doctors, very likely take a vaccine. I certainly did. But I also believe that we ought to pay attention to the science that suggests that people who have had the coronavirus and have developed antibodies might very well be at less risk than those who have been vaccinated. And in just a minute, I'm going to play you 3 scientists from Pfizer caught on a Project Veritas undercover tape, all concluding that you have greater protection from immunity than you do from the vaccine. And they also admitted that what we're saying is something we cannot say out loud. One of them said we've signed a non-disclosure agreement. One of them said that you can't even speak the truth at Pfizer for fear of retribution. Well, I'm going to play that for you in just a second. And the AG of Nebraska says that doctors in that state can prescribe ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, which are now off-label for COVID-19. All of that and more. Now, have you tried Relief Factor? 3-week quick start, still discounted to only $19.95. That is less than $1 a day to see if we can get you out of pain. After that, less than the cost of a cup of coffee a day for you to stay out of pain. If you have back, shoulder, neck, hip, foot, knee pain from exercise, or just getting older, just dealing with life on a day-to-day basis, consider ordering the 3-week quick start. 4 100% drug-free ingredients, each of which deal with pain from a different metabolic pathway. Just go to relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com, or call 800-500-8384, 800-500-8384.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
This White House has absolutely no idea what is happening in America. It is completely divorced from reality, devoid of any understanding. And you know, they always say that the organization reflects the leader. Well, they've got a feckless, pathetic, completely out-to-lunch leader, and that has completely permeated this White House, if you can call it that.
So at this point, it's hard to imagine how much worse the situation could get. In that case, the question I always return to, and you are a guy who's worked on so many campaigns, not just in the White House, your political sense is fine-tuned. Is there not a point, if you look at the cargo ships off LA, you look at the 2 million illegal aliens, you look at the 4 million people who resigned from their jobs last year, you look at the inflation, you look at everything to do with national security, with Afghanistan. Is there no point at which Biden becomes an albatross around the neck of the Democrats, or are they just too afraid to have the cackler in the Oval?
It's happened already. Look at Virginia.
Yeah.
Terry McAuliffe is losing to Youngkin in a race where Biden won by 10 points.
But hang on, Boris.
Okay?
Boris, it's not just that, Youngkin has a shot. Did you ever think that Terry McAuliffe would actually publicly state that the Democrat president is the reason that he might lose Virginia?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. There's no doubt about it. America is in the middle of a culture war. The battle between left and right is real. One side believes in American greatness. The other wants to tear it down. The Salem Radio Network and the Salem Podcast Network is looking for a few warriors who are already fighting this war. This is your chance to nominate a person worthy of the honor of being Salem's Culture Warrior of 2021. Go to this show's website and click on the banner. Help us select Salem's Culture Warrior of the Year.
Hi, Larry. I'm calling from Huntington Beach, and I am a parent here. And I just wanted to say that Governor Gavin Newsom has declared war on the parents of California, and we are not going to put up with it anymore. And we are fighting back, and we appreciate you and your conservative values, your voice, and your advocacy for freedom. Thank you for standing with us, and let's get our state back. Thank you. Bye-bye.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. Before I play you the undercover tape of these three Pfizer scientists all acknowledging that natural immunity is superior to a vaccine, to my other caller who was snarky about how Republicans have a different approach to dealing with this pandemic, I'm holding in my baby brown libertarian fingers an article from the Washington Examiner, headline, Rick DeSantis' critics fall silent as Florida's COVID-19 cases drop. I also have another article, both of which we're putting up on LarryElder.com. This is from Breitbart. Florida's coronavirus case average per capita lower than all but 2 states. At the end of the Breitbart article, in case you are listening and you say Larry's only quoting conservative sources, those two I mentioned are in fact conservative. At the end of the Breitbart piece, it mentions that even Yahoo News recognized the fact that all of a sudden people aren't talking about Florida. They published a piece yesterday called DeSantis' Critics Fall Silent as Florida's COVID-19 cases drop. And as you know, he had a very different approach. He allowed businesses to resume operations with some limits early in May of last year. That was just 2 months after the virus shut down almost the whole country. And by September of last year, he lifted all restrictions and began efforts to limit new ones that local governments could impose. Florida now, lower case average than all but 2 states. Only Louisiana and Hawaii reported lower figures per 100,000 residents. In the past 2 weeks, Florida has seen a 33% decrease in cases, which means it's faring better than California, which saw a decrease of 19%, and New York, which saw a decrease of 8%. He never implemented a statewide mask mandate during the pandemic and got a huge pushback, was widely denounced on cable channels such as CNN, MSNBC, and now all of a sudden they're not interested in covering what's going on in Florida. Pourquoi? Here is the Project Veritas tape. 3 scientists all discussing how catching COVID, surviving COVID, is better than the Pfizer vaccine.
Inside portion of the actual virus, so your antibodies are probably better at that point than the vaccination.
Nick Carl is an experienced biochemist at Pfizer with a history of working in the pharmaceutical industry. Nick admits to our undercover journalist that those who've had COVID have stronger immunity than those who've received the Pfizer COVID vaccine.
When somebody is naturally immune, like they got COVID, they probably have better, like not better, but more antibodies against the virus. Because what the vaccine is like I said, that protein that's just on the outside. So it's just one antibody against one specific part of the virus. When you actually get the virus, you're going to start producing antibodies against like multiple pieces of the virus. And not only just like that outside portion, like the inside portion, the actual virus. So your antibodies are probably better at that point than the vaccination.
But don't take his word for it. 2 other Pfizer scientists echo the same sentiment.
So I'm well protected, like as much as the vaccine?
Probably more.
How so? Like how much more?
You're protected most likely for longer, since it was a natural response.
We're like bred and taught to be like vaccine is safer than actually getting COVID. You cannot like talk about this like it's not in public. If you have antibodies built up, like you should be able to prove that you have those built up.
I mean, I still feel like I work for like an evil corporation. They're trying to keep track of everyone that's been vaccinated versus the census of how many people are actually reported. Basically, our organization is run on COVID money now. You don't talk about anything that can possibly implicate you or like big pharma. Like even if you shut the door to the office, it's kind of like, who's listening?
That's bombshell. 3 Pfizer scientists. One, a biochemist named Nick Carl. Quote, when somebody is naturally immune, like they got COVID, they probably have a better, not better, but more antibodies against the virus. Because what the vaccine is, like I said, that protein that's just not on the outside, so it's one antibody against one specific part of the virus. When you actually get the virus, you're going to start producing antibodies against multiple pieces of virus, and not only just the outside portion, like the inside portion, the actual virus, end of quote. Another scientist named Chris Croce, C-R-O-C-H-E, said probably more. Quote, you're protected more likely for longer since it was a natural response, end of quote. Third Pfizer scientist, Rahul Gandhi, quote, if you have antibodies built up, you should be able to prove that you have those. We're bred and taught to be like, vaccine is safer than actually getting COVID. Honestly, we had to do so many seminars on this. You have no idea. Like we have to sit there for hours and hours and listen to be like, you cannot talk about this in public, end of quote. Croce also disagreed with keeping track of vaccinated people. Quote, you shouldn't have to show anything that is basically, in my opinion, a violation of the HIPAA laws. No one has the right to ask you if you've been vaccinated. It's an invasion of privacy. I don't agree with it. He also said that, quote, I still feel like I work for an evil corporation because it comes down to profits in the end. Basically, our organization is run on COVID money now. End of quote. Did they show that on CNN? MSNBC? As I mentioned, the 3-week quick start is still discounted to only $19.95. That is less than $1 a day to see if we can get you out of pain. After that, less than the cost of a cup of coffee a day for you to stay out of pain. Over 70% of those who've ordered the 3-week quick start go on to order more. The doctors who formulated Relief Factor selected the 4 best ingredients, each of which are 100% drug-free, to deal with pain from a different metabolic pathway. So if you've got back, shoulder, neck, hip, foot, knee pain from exercise, or just getting older, consider ordering the 3-week Quick Start, still discounted to $19.95. ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com, or call 800-500-8384, 800-500-8384.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
Because all it takes is one example of something that works, and that's why Florida and Hungary, in my opinion, are so similar, right? Is that Florida's the domestic example of a more orderly, common sense approach to the land of the insane, right? And they hate that. Like, we must crush Ron DeSantis, we must crush Viktor Orban, right?
Right, and notice that the people calling for crushing other people are the ones calling you a fascist. So the very people who are like, oh, no, it's totally normal to fire someone from his job because I disagree with him. It's totally normal to beat someone up for having a Trump hat on, a political party that I don't support. Yeah, we should beat him up. It's totally cool to burn your cities on the basis of political ideology, BLM, over the last year and a half. No, it's totally fine. But if you disagree that you're the fascist, it's like at a certain point, I think we're too literal. I know that I certainly am way too literal. Every night, I'm writing my scripts and I'm like, I can't, but it's the opposite of the truth. And at a certain point, that's on me. Of course, it's the opposite of the truth. It's a totalitarian worldview that inverts reality for its own power. Like, that's just what it is. And if I continue to be surprised by it, then I'm the moron. The question is, what do you do about it? And I'm not sure I know the answer. I mean, I'm not in charge of anything. I'm just a talk show host, so my job is just to say it out loud. I think that's a helpful first step. But you can see where this is going. I mean, CNN just fired 3 employees for not getting the vaccine. Just fired them, like right, and no one said anything. Also, that's totally normal. Take a man's livelihood away because he won't take a medicine that you want him to take, that he may not need, that he certainly doesn't want, and he can't work in this country. Like, what do we want to live in that country? I don't.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Hey, this is Melissa from South Carolina. Questioning as far as when we are working, we're paying taxes in for our Social Security when we get older. Well, these folks that are living off the government, what's going to happen? Are our kids going to be paying for them until they're no longer on the earth? So, here we are paying in for our time that we work into Social Security, and, they're just going to get it for free again. So what happens with that?
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. Coming up, your calls. Also, 16,000 COVID-19 positive illegal aliens have been released into the country by ICE, according to a whistleblower. And, of course, they've not been tested. And Chicago is beginning to put officers on no pay leave status amid a vaccine slowdown. And recall, Jen Psaki was asked just the other day whether or not the vaccine mandates, in fact, make America safer, given the numbers of police officers who are quitting over the vaccine mandate.
All these other problems, terror, murder, robberies, kidnappings, is there any concern that if police forces shrink or if the size of the ready military force shrinks, that the United States or localities may not be equipped properly to deal with
Peter, more than 700,000 people have died of COVID. Again, it was the #1 cause of death among police departments and police officers. It's something that we should take seriously. Departments are trying to save people in their departments, people who work for them. We support that effort, and there's been success across the country in that regard.
Here is what a Chicago alderman said about that. His name is Brian Hopkins.
I think she's aware of the situation we're in right now in terms of the potential.
The she that referring to is the mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot.
I think she's aware of the situation we're in right now in terms of the potential impact on public safety. We're already short police officers. We're down, probably about 20% from where our peak staffing levels were a few years ago. So we're short patrol officers, where we've been unsuccessful, like jurisdictions all across the country, at recruiting young people to choose careers in law enforcement. We have retirements happening at an accelerated pace. We can't afford to lose 1,000 police officers. We can't afford to fire 1,000 police officers over an impasse like this right now. So I think the mayor is aware that she's in an untenable position, as far as trying to bargain her way out of this. But frankly, she put herself in that position.
By the way, when the gentleman was saying, businesses are okay with mandates, many businesses are okay with government forcing them to require their employees to be vaccinated because they don't want to do it. They know it's unpopular. They'd rather be able to say, the government made me do it. So the rationale is not nearly as noble as you think it is. A number of workers want COVID-19 recovery accepted as evidence of immunity, one of whom is a basketball player who plays for the Orlando Magic. All of that and more. I'm Larry Elder.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
This White House has absolutely no idea what is happening in America. It is completely divorced from reality, devoid of any understanding. And they always say that the organization reflects the leader. Well, they've got a feckless, pathetic, completely out to lunch leader, and that has completely permeated this White House, if you can call it that.
So at this point, it's hard to imagine how much worse the situation could get. In that case, the question I always return to, and you are a guy who's worked on so many campaigns, not just in the White House, your political sense is fine-tuned. Is there not a point, if you look at the cargo ships off LA, you look at the 2 million illegal aliens, you look at the 4 million people who resigned from their jobs last year, you look at the inflation, you look at everything to do with national security, with Afghanistan. Is there no point at which Biden becomes an albatross around the neck of the Democrats, or are they just too afraid to have the cackler in the Oval?
It's happened already. Look at Virginia.
Yeah.
Terry McAuliffe is losing to Youngkin in a race where Biden won by 10 points.
But hang on, Boris.
Okay?
Boris, it's not just that, Youngkin has a shot. Did you ever think that Terry McAuliffe would actually publicly state that the Democrat president is the reason that he might lose Virginia?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
But yet our country is controlled by Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and BioNTech. And therefore, we're not even allowed to have a conversation about ivermectin. But the few people that are free speech warriors like Joe Rogan, he does not let up. Cut 55, and then we'll go through all three cuts here. And this is, by the way, if you have not listened to this podcast discussion with Sanjay Gupta, it's incredible. Because maybe Sanjay Gupta thought that they were going to have a nice little conversation about why people need to wear masks. I don't know what he was thinking going on Joe Rogan's show. But Joe is mad, and good for Joe. Joe Rogan asked Sanjay Gupta, does it bother you that CNN lied about me? Cut 55.
Does it bother you that the news network you work for out and out lied, just outright lied about me taking horse dewormer?
They shouldn't have said that.
Why did they do that?
I don't know.
You didn't ask? You didn't think that was you're the medical guy over there.
I didn't ask. I should have asked before
but they
coming
did
on
it
your
with
podcast.
such glee.
No,
yes,
Joe.
they did. I watched.
Gorgeous. I want to frame that. Because because we see this little shriveling of a weak human, Sanjay Gupta. I should have asked. I didn't know. You understand that these media reporters have never been called out before? I think Sanjay Gupta was there to promote a book. I don't think it's doing very well after that. I think he has a new book, like COVID War Zero or something. I really think it's called World War COVID. I think that's the name of the book. And so CNN, he's the medical guy there. And so Joe says, you're the medical guy there. What do you mean? And Joe Rogan doesn't give up. He's a dog with a bone, everybody. He says, wait a second. It should bother you. It's a lie on your network, and it's your conscious of it.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Secretary Chow, I'm glad you were available today because there are two headlines. One from the Wall Street Journal. Biggest U.S. retailers charter private cargo ships to sail around port delays. Then in the New York Times, it's not sustainable. What America's port crisis looks like up close. There aren't enough workers. There aren't enough ships. You've been the Secretary of Labor and the Secretary of Transportation. What do we do?
It's a very dire situation. You know, when COVID initially hit our shores early in 2020, I was then Secretary of Transportation, and we quickly focused on keeping the transportation supply chains open so that essential medical supplies, groceries, and other essentials were available. And that effort actually required some pretty strong measures. Number one, we decided to ease some restrictions on truckers so that they can keep goods moving. We made sure that the national airspace kept airplanes flying because even though at one point planes were nearly empty of passengers, commercial airliners also routinely transport a lot of goods, especially medical supplies. You know, remember those early days of the initial lockdowns? We had hoarding of toilet paper, sandy wipes, shortage of masks. Stores were putting limits on how much customers can buy of one item. And more than 70% of domestic freight moves via trucks. But today's supply chain problems extend all the way, where worker shortages and COVID lockdowns have slowed the loading of cargo ships from where they started to U.S. ports, where, as you just mentioned, the other day there were over 60 freighters with tens of thousands of storage containers offshore waiting for an opportunity to unload.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Right. So this has changed in the culture. We now have entire stadiums screaming blank Joe Biden.
Right.
I actually think that in some measure, this is a sign of health in the country.
I don't think you're wrong. In fact, my last column, I talk about in essence, what the American people are feeling in terms of how they're being treated by the current administration.
Now, excuse me, by the way, I'm not saying I approve of it.
Right.
It makes me uncomfortable.
Clearly.
But at the same time,
we're talking about what we're observing.
It seems like a strange sign of health that we feel free enough to say that.
Well, and I don't even know that we necessarily feel free. What I would say is that the American people feel like kind of a battered spouse at this point.
Okay, you wrote an article.
And that the administration is so abusive to how they're treating people that this reaction that you're seeing, and it started out in 2 college football stadiums. It's now been in dozens to hundreds.
It's the new wave.
NFL teams had it going on this week. Talladega or NASCAR or whatever they ran had people chanting it. There is something so inherently abusive about how people are being treated
by the government.
They are, and particularly in a society that wouldn't consider itself particularly Christocentric. And it is, I am actually thankful, to your point, to see a degree of we're not going to let this abuse continue, even if it's nothing more than using our freedom of speech to say something that's very vulgar and attach it to him. We're not taking it anymore.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
Hey, Larry Elder.
Larry Elder here, the sage from South Central, the prince of Pico Union, the czar of common sense, the great Eldersky, Don Lorenzo, welcome to the program. No Victocrats allowed because we've got a country to save. So let's get her teed up!
You want to play rock? Say hello to my little friend!
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. We're talking about the fact that Dennis Prager has contracted the coronavirus. He's not been vaccinated. Says he doesn't trust a vaccine that was approved on such a fast schedule. Most of these vaccines, he points out, have taken years to develop, and he feels we won't really know about the actual results for years to come. As a result, he was not comfortable. I mentioned last hour about Florida. You know, Ron DeSantis has been attacked. But now Florida's cases are dropping rapidly, and the same people who attacked him just months ago now radio free silence. In Florida, new infections per 100,000 residents dropped to 12 over the past week. Over the past 14 days, cases dropped by 48%. Other states with far more expansive restrictions are seeing cases continue to spread at much faster rates than Florida. New York, for example, rate of new cases is more than double that of Florida's. Florida, as I mentioned, 12 per 100,000. New York now 25 per 100,000 over the last week. Washington State, we played you the officer who is quitting his job because of the vaccine mandates, is at 31 per 100,000 versus Florida's 12. Remember, he allowed Governor DeSantis businesses to resume operations with some limits early in May last year, and by September had lifted all restrictions and tried to limit the restrictions that local governments could impose. Very few of the dramatic predictions about DeSantis' approach have been realized, according to the Washington Examiner. He refused to mandate masks, refused to mandate social distancing measures, but they continue to sound the alarm over his decision to reopen schools fully without any masking requirements in the classroom. In August and September, because of the Delta variant, it drove a deadly wave of new infections, and then the scrutiny came back intensely. But now that the curve is turned down, all of a sudden nobody gives a damn about Florida anymore. Amazing, isn't it? His economy wasn't wrecked the way other states were. I've told you out here in California, we've only recovered 50% of the jobs pre-pandemic, and a good 1/3 of all small businesses are now gone forever. Wall Street Journal is reporting that many workers want COVID-19 recovery accepted as evidence of immunity. Nurses, factory workers, pro athletes, two of whom we're going to talk about in just a second, suggest that immunity from prior COVID-19 be recognized alongside vaccination as sufficient protection against the virus. Cites a 51-year-old nurse teaching at who works at a large teaching hospital in Boston. Says she doesn't want to get vaccinated because she's worried about the potential long-term side effects. She says she was infected with COVID-19 in December after exposure to an ICU patient. She said blood samples she provided to 2 clinical studies of immunity among healthcare workers have shown a high level of circulating antibodies. Yet she was denied a medical exemption to her employer's vaccine mandate and will be fired if she doesn't get vaccinated by early next month. Quote, "My frustration," she says, "I have protection. So I should be clumped in with people who are vaccinated. Could COVID survivors are not the same as the unvaccinated, but we're being treated like we are. There should be a third category, end of quote. The NBA basketball player named Jonathan Isaac feels the same way, has contracted the coronavirus, has survived it, and here's what he said.
A lot went into my decision for not, deciding to get the vaccine. For starters, I've had COVID in the past. I've come to understand that our reactions in terms of immunity by natural infection is robust and long lasting. And so I have that with my current physical fitness level and my age group. I don't feel that I'm in a category of, fear or necessary need right now to get the vaccine. The craziness and the vitriol going around right now, people losing their jobs, I feel that the blatant miscarriage of information by the media has turned this thing so sour, and it's been politicized. And I see people, and I'm standing with people who are deciding not to get it on the backs of freedom. Freedom, giving people the choice, the religious freedom to choose what they want to do as our country was founded. And those are my reasons for not getting the vaccine at this time. It's not that people should not get the vaccine. That's not the argument. It's that for me, there aren't scientific, legal, or to me, moral grounds for the vaccine mandate itself. I think when you take into account the nature of COVID, the nature of the vaccine that doesn't stop infection or transmission, the nature of natural immunity that hasn't been talked about, and then obviously the polarization by the media that has created such distrust.
Now that brings us to another NBA superstar. His name is Kyrie Irving. And he, too, has refused to be vaccinated. In his case, if he's contracted it, I don't know that he has. He's not admitted it. Now, New York City and San Francisco are the only two cities that are requiring professional athletes to show proof of vaccination for competition inside stadiums in order to play home games. Irving plays for the Brooklyn Nets, but is refusing to be vaccinated. And his team is not going to allow him to play just part-time, not play there, but play other places where he's allowed to play without showing proof of having been vaccinated. The NBA commissioner says he hopes that Kyrie Irving will, in fact, get vaccinated, but there is no league-wide rule. The NBA Players Association did not agree to a league-wide mandate, despite the fact that the commissioner wanted them to. And the reason he wanted them to is that there would be a bright rule. He wouldn't have to do individual exemptions and exceptions, and he'd be off the hook by saying, I'm sorry, my hands are tied. By the way, according to an article in Rolling Stone, Irving is to have engaged on Instagram content that supports conspiracy theories that claims secret societies are implanting vaccines in a plot to hurt black people. Doesn't say whether he's agreed with it, but apparently he's engaged in an Instagram content. I don't know whether that means he's reposted it or commented on it or what have you. Now, I find it interesting. Jeff Van Gundy is a former coach of the New York Knicks. And about Kyrie Irving, he said, quote, sometimes common sense is in short supply, end of quote. I presume he's referring to the conspiracy theory that the vaccine is a plot to get black people. Has Jeff Van Gundy said anything about LeBron James's assertion that systemic racism by cops is mowing down black people when the evidence shows just the opposite? That if anything, the police are more hesitant, more reluctant to pull the trigger on a black suspect than a white suspect? Has he denounced LeBron James for that? Has he denounced NBA fan Spike Lee for his conspiracy that George W. Bush had levees blown up during Hurricane Katrina? I'm just asking. 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. Do not leave town.
How 1 million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans.
Go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
If you can stop an earthquake, doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Judge Thomas, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
57 Muslim states in the world, one Jewish state.
Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
There's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
This is why we're fighting for the soul of America.
You should be able to share ideas without fear of being fired from your job or shouted down.
You are not to be heard. This is one of the few things we have no precedent for in the United States.
You have the right to remain silent.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
There's no doubt about it. America is in the middle of a culture war. The battle between left and right is real. One side believes in American greatness. The other wants to tear it down. The Salem Radio Network and the Salem Podcast Network is looking for a few warriors who are already fighting this war. This is your chance to nominate a person worthy of the honor of being Salem's Culture Warrior of 2021. Go to this show's website and click on the banner. Help us select Salem's Culture Warrior of the Year. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
I have never seen in my life the orchestrated hatred to a group of Americans as I am seeing now. It's orchestrated hatred. You are allowed to hate the unvaccinated. Even if the unvaccinated had COVID already, and there is no scientific reason whatsoever for them to take as minimal a risk as it is the vaccine. You are to hate these people. They are killers. They are killing you and themselves. This is this piece of crap governor of California on television.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. There's no doubt about it. America is in the middle of a culture war. The battle between left and right is real. One side believes in American greatness. The other wants to tear it down. The Salem Radio Network and the Salem Podcast Network is looking for a few warriors who are already fighting this war. This is your chance to nominate a person worthy of the honor of being Salem's Culture Warrior of 2021. Go to this show's website and click on the banner. Help us select Salem's Culture Warrior of the Year.
Hey, Larry, I remember a question your father asked you. Why did you write a book about his little life? Well, them looking down from heaven, he knows now. He sees what his little life created. A son that tried to help millions of people in the United States. And I'm sure your family is beaming with pride right now.
Well, thank you so much for that. 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. I often thought about what my mom and my dad, my brother Kirk, my little brother Dennis would have thought about my running for governor. I know what my mom would have said. She would have urged me to run well before I did run. My father would have been worried about my safety, would have been worried about how I'd be treated by the media. But my mom wouldn't have given a rip. She would have just said, do it. So I think they were proud. I hope they were. One of my proudest moments is when I was giving a speech at the Ronald Reagan Library. I invited my mom and my dad. And during the speech, I mentioned a few things about them. And as I was continuing, they started applauding. And they gave my parents a standing ovation. And my first book had just come out in 2000 called The 10 Things You Can't Say in America. And when I finished the speech, there was a line of people behind my father holding pens in my book, and my dad was autographing the books. And I was watching this, and I said, only in America. Only in America can somebody who's never run for office before get into the race with 8 weeks left, outraise his Republican rivals combined, get a greater percentage of the replacement vote than the Republican rivals combined, win outright 29 of the state's 58 counties. On the replacement side, win 57 of the 58 counties. The only one I didn't win was San Francisco. And I didn't spend a dime advertising nor 1 minute campaigning. We still almost won that one. On the replacement side, I got a little bit under 49% last I checked, which is a higher percentage than Arnold Schwarzenegger received back in 2003 when we had our first and only successful recall of a governor. And during 2003, the battlefield was dramatically different than the one I faced. Since then, there are now 5% more registered Democrats. Almost 50% of the whole state is now registered Democrat. There are 50% more registered independents. And even the New York Times admitted that independents in California typically vote Democrat. And there are 33% fewer registered Republicans than was the case when Schwarzenegger ran. And still, on the replacement side, I got a higher percentage of the votes than he did. I mentioned yesterday that the campaign manager of Gavin Newsom bragged, that we converted this into a referendum not on Gavin Newsom, not on his record, but on Donald Trump. And virtually every one of the ads cut by Barack Obama, not virtually all of them, cut by Barack Obama, by Bernie Sanders, by Elizabeth Warren, all referred to this as a, quote, Republican takeover, close quote. And his campaign manager bragged about it. So Democrats fear a Republican takeover more than they fear rising crime, violent crime up around 40% in major cities. By violent crime, I'm talking about shootings, homicides, not just store thefts. And as you know, a whole bunch of stores have now been closed in San Francisco and elsewhere because can't make any money because people are walking in stealing up to $950. Not just a day, but per store, with virtually no risk of any consequences at all. It is now a misdemeanor, not a felony. And the security guards aren't even trying to stop anybody because they know they'll be subject to lawsuits. So people literally going in and stealing. Soft on crime DAs, both of which were backed by Gavin Newsom in San Francisco and in Los Angeles. The one in LA, by the way, is facing a recall because he believes in cashless bail. And he believes in not imposing what are called special circumstances or criminal enhancements. One example, several months ago, a woman, happened to be a black female. I only mention that because, again, this is the kind of people that people like Gavin Newsom pride themselves on caring about. Because when he won the recall, he said it was a victory for inclusion, a victory for diversity, whatever the hell that means. Black female, former executive at a bank, tortured, brutally murdered. And because of the unwillingness to impose special circumstances, assuming the defendant gets convicted, he would be eligible to be released in less than 10 years. Again, Gavin Newsom's campaign manager bragged that we converted this into a referendum on Donald Trump, which is exactly what they're trying to do in Virginia. There is a real close battle between the former Democrat governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe, and his Republican opponent named Youngkin. And they're doing exactly the same thing there. The difference is Virginia ain't California. We'll see whether or not it works. But if you're a Democrat listening to my program, and I know a lot of you do listen to it, and I want to admit it to your friends and neighbors, but I know you do because you think my show is fair and smart. And of course, I have a wickedly funny sense of humor. Are you okay with Gavin Newsom's campaign manager bragging that the way they were able to win the race is to reframe it into a Republican takeover? And what exactly does Republican takeover mean? 2/3 of the legislature here in California are Democrats. Had I won the recall election, 2/3 of the legislatures in Sacramento would have remained Democrats. Republican takeover. Abortion became an issue, for example, during the campaign because of the Texas heartbeat law. And I was asked about that. And I said, I'm running because crime has gone up. I'm running because homelessness has gone up. I'm running because of the way this man shut down the state and denied government school educated kids a whole year of in-person education. And before the pandemic, half of all third graders could not read at state proficiency levels, which are low. And the math scores are even worse. I'm running because people are leaving California for the first time, I said, in the state's 170-year history. I'm running because of poor forest fire management, because we're running out of water because of the failure to invest in our water infrastructure in about 40 or 50 years when the state is half its size. I'm running on what we call rolling brownouts because of the failure to invest properly in our energy grid. That's why I'm running. Yeah, but abortion. Yeah, but Trump. Yeah, but minimum wage. Oh, and Trump. Are you okay with that? Democrats, independents? You were being manipulated. You were being used. You were being triggered. Has crime gone down? Homelessness gotten better? Schools gotten better? I'm Larry Elder.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
This White House has absolutely no idea what is happening in America. It is devoid, completely divorced from reality, devoid of any understanding. And you know, they always say that the organization reflects the leader. Well, they've got a feckless, pathetic, completely out to lunch leader, and that has completely permeated this White House, if you can call it that.
So at this point, it's hard to imagine how much worse the situation could get. In that case, the question I always return to, and you are a guy who's worked on so many campaigns, not just in the White House, your political sense is fine-tuned. Is there not a point, if you look at the cargo ships off LA, you look at the 2 million illegal aliens, you look at the 4 million people who resigned from their jobs last year, you look at the inflation, you look at everything to do with national security, with Afghanistan. Is there no point at which Biden becomes an albatross around the neck of the Democrats, or are they just too afraid to have the cackler in the Oval?
It's happened already. Look at Virginia.
Yeah.
Terry McAuliffe is losing to Youngkin in a race where Biden won by 10 points.
But hang on, Boris. Okay? Boris, it's not just that, you know, Youngkin has a shot. Did you ever think that Terry McAuliffe would actually publicly state that the Democrat president is the reason that he might lose Virginia?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
But yet our country is controlled by Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and BioNTech. And therefore, we're not even allowed to have a conversation about ivermectin. But the few people that are free speech warriors like Joe Rogan, he does not let up. Cut 55, and then we'll go through all three cuts here. And this is, by the way, if you have not listened to this podcast discussion with Sanjay Gupta, it's incredible. Because maybe Sanjay Gupta thought that they were going to have a nice little conversation about why people need to wear masks. I don't know what he was thinking going on Joe Rogan's show. But Joe is mad. And good for Joe. Joe Rogan asked Sanjay Gupta, does it bother you that CNN lied about me? Cut 55.
Does it bother you that the news network you work for out and out lied, just outright lied about me taking horse dewormer?
They shouldn't have said that.
Why did they do that?
I don't know.
You didn't ask? You didn't think that was you're the medical guy over there.
I didn't ask. I should have asked before coming on
But they did
your
it with
podcast.
such glee.
No,
yes,
Joe.
they did. I watched.
Gorgeous. I want to frame that. Because because we see this little shriveling of a weak human, Sanjay Gupta. I should have asked. I didn't know. You understand that these media reporters have never been called out before? I think Sanjay Gupta was there to promote a book. I don't think it's doing very well after that. I think he has a new book, like COVID War Zero or something. I really think it's called World War COVID. I think that's the name of the book. And so CNN, he's the medical guy there. And so Joe says, you're the medical guy there. What do you mean? And Joe Rogan doesn't give up. He's a dog with a bone, everybody. He says, wait a second. It should bother you. It's a lie on your network, and it's your conscience of it.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Seen this town so dirty. I've never seen crime go up so quickly in the last year. I think a 39% increase in homicides. The spread of homelessness and the increase of homelessness all throughout the city. I think there's a lack of urgency, a lack of clear leadership in this town right now. I think to many it feels like Rome is burning. I shine shoes on 7th and Broadway and sometimes on 5th and Broadway. I know Broadway and downtown. And I remember it when we left in 2013. It was booming. And we're going to have to do something. Humane, yes, but something to address the level of homelessness, to build the housing that we need, to address the zoning and CEQA changes that are necessary to be able to do this, more expeditiously and for less money. And do it quickly.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. That was the former mayor of Los Angeles, Democrat named Antonio Villaraigosa. He, of course, didn't make these comments until after the recall election was over. Now, I mentioned a moment ago, before I get back to COVID, that the campaign manager of my former opponent, Gavin Newsom, literally bragged that he turned this into a referendum on Donald Trump. Not a referendum on Gavin Newsom's record, because they couldn't defend it, of course. I got a question. Exactly how many trips did Donald Trump make here to California on my behalf while I was running for governor? None. But in comes Obama, cuts a commercial for him. Joe Biden flies here. Kamala Harris comments. Bernie Sanders cuts a commercial. Elizabeth Warren cuts a commercial. Did Donald Trump endorse my candidacy? No. Said nothing. But Gavin Newsom said, and I quote, "Elder is more Trump than Trump," close quote. What does that even mean? What it means is he thinks you Democrats are so emotional, so unconcerned about things like crime, so unconcerned about the declining quality of public education, even though we're spending more and more and more, unconcerned about the fact that California, the average price of a home here, has just now hit $800,000, 150% above the national average, a minimum of 150% above the national average. So unconcerned that more businesses have left California in 2021 that have left all of last year, and the rate at which businesses are leaving is twice the rate at which they've left in the last 2 or 3 years. So unconcerned about the fact that we are running out of water, all you have to do is say Trump. Trump. Republican takeover. Now, regarding abortion, I mentioned that it became an issue in the campaign because the media made it an issue in the campaign. I was asked about it. I said, this is California. Let's assume Roe v. Wade is overturned. What makes you think these left-wing lawmakers are all pro-choice are suddenly going to pass a law similar to the Texas law? And one of the reasons many of us believe that Roe v. Wade was wrongly decided, and it was and should be overturned, is because it was based upon something called the right to privacy, which does not exist in the United States Constitution. But guess what? It does exist in the California Constitution. So in the event that Roe v. Wade is overturned, and I hope that it is and will be, there is zero prospect that the lawmakers suddenly in Sacramento are going to begin to pass laws to restrict access to abortion. Zero. Yet media brought this up. They brought this up because they were defending Gavin Newsom. Frequently I was asked, why is it you didn't debate any of your Republican rivals? And I would always say, never print it. Why is it you haven't asked Gavin Newsom to debate me? Why is it you haven't asked Gavin Newsom to debate me and defend his record on crime? Oversaw the release of 18,000 convicted felons, many of whom were convicted of violent offenses early because of coronavirus. Are you kidding me? Left-wing rhetoric about systemic racism, calling cops to pull back. Fewer stops, fewer arrests, crime goes up. Guess who gets hurt? The very minorities that people on the left claim that they care about. Let's have Gavin Newsom debate me on these issues, I said. Never, ever printed it. 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. The AG in Nebraska said doctors can prescribe ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, off-label, all of that and more. I am Larry Elder. Do not leave town.
This is why we're fighting for the soul of America. You should be able to share ideas without fear of being fired from your job or shouted down.
You are not to be heard. This is one of the few things we have no precedent for in the United States.
You have the right to remain silent.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
How 1 million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans.
Go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
If you can stop an earthquake, doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Judge Thomas, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Boy, the state of Florida just fined Leon County $3.5 million because they fired 14 employees.
Coercion is just totally wrong. I think it's destroying trust in public health to the extent that there was still trust left over after all the stuff that's been done. But I think it's really, really negative, and I think you're going to end up driving people away.
You know, Governor DeSantis makes a great observation about the way the mandate is driving people in the other direction. And that's why companies have got to stop the mandates. This just has to stop. This isn't working. You cannot fire people over a vaccine.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. There's no doubt about it. America is in the middle of a culture war. The battle between left and right is real. One side believes in American greatness. The other wants to tear it down. The Salem Radio Network and the Salem Podcast Network is looking for a few warriors who are already fighting this war. This is your chance to nominate a person worthy of the honor of being Salem's Culture Warrior of 2021. Go to this show's website and click on the banner. Help us select Salem's Culture Warrior of the Year.
I think this family can pick you up every time you fall.
Every time I take one step forward.
When Wright came in this morning, he wants to fight you.
No one expected this out of him.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
57 Muslim states in the world, one Jewish state.
Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
There's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Thousands of people not getting sick. And my hope is they'll be then inclined to say, okay, it's worth the patriotic duty to go ahead and protect other people. Thank you all so very much. Thank you.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. That was Joe Biden, December of last year, saying, I'm not going to suggest that masks and vaccines be mandatory. Are you kidding me? Later on, White House is rolling out a plan to vaccinate kids, even though the FDA hasn't approved it yet. All of that and more, 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. Larry Elder here. Michael is in Sacramento. Michael, you're on the Larry Elder Show. Thank you so much for calling. I appreciate it. Michael? Absent without leave. All right. KJ is in Danville, California. KJ, you're on the Larry Elder Show.
Larry, how are you?
I'm doing well, sir.
Listen, I just wanted to say fantastic job. I know that was a tough run. I voted for you. I'm a huge supporter. I would actually love to even work on the coming campaign in the next 2 months. But I felt like it was important to call and let you know that I believe that one of the key components to your loss was that you did not acknowledge that Trump lost the election or that the election was stolen from Trump. And I think had you done that, you would have had a huge groundswell of support not just from California, but from all over.
Well, KJ, I have a couple of responses. First of all, I did acknowledge that there were shenanigans, as I put it. I talked about lots of things that I thought were unfair, not least of which are the way the coronavirus was used to expand deadlines, I think often illegally. What you're referring to is when I said I was asked whether Joe Biden won the election fair and square. I said yes, and then proceeded to say there were shenanigans. That part of my quote was cut off, but a lot of people had the same reaction that you had, and I elaborated at a great length about the many things that I thought were unfair, not least of which is the suppression of the Hunter Biden story. But your assertion that had I given a different answer, it's pretty bizarre when you consider I carried 57 to 58 counties on the replacement side, that I raised more money than all my Republican rivals combined. I had a greater percentage of the replacement votes than all my Republican rivals combined. Furthermore, people on the left, independents and Democrats, would very be happy for me to say that I thought the election in 2020 was fair. So I don't understand how you feel that had I given a different answer, there would have been some sort of groundswell. I did have a groundswell, for crying out loud.
Larry, you had me, but you didn't have Trump, which would have been the difference.
What makes you think I didn't have Trump?
I did not see him coming out and endorsing you.
Did I ask him to?
If I missed that up.
Well, KJ, did I ask him to? I talked about that a moment ago. Did you hear what I said a moment ago?
Important endorsement. He's the most important endorsement in the Republican
Party. For crying out loud, KJ, why do you suppose KJ, Politics 101. Why do you suppose the governor of Virginia has not invited Donald Trump out to campaign for him? The guy running for Republican side?
I admit it can be a double-edged sword to have his endorsement.
Well, and especially here, KJ, especially here in California, you saw the election. He lost by 30 or 40 points. I mentioned this before, probably to Democrats and to independents in California, KJ, not to you and me, not to normal people, but to Democrats and independents in California. Probably the only person less popular than Donald Trump in California is Charlie Manson, and he's dead.
Listen, as I said, I love you. I would love to work on the future campaign. I felt that if that had been something that you had embraced aggressively, the groundswell of anger about that election is still so powerful. I just think I know you were trying to thread the needle, trying to get some of the more middle-of-the-road voters over to our side.
And KJ, I think you also ought to give me some love for this, too. Every time I was asked about the election of 2020, I said, have you ever asked my opponent, Gavin Newsom, if he feels 2016 was stolen? And I get this bizarre look. And I remind them that Hillary, for 4 years, referred to that election as having been stolen.
Russian collusion.
I'm sorry?
Russian collusion for 3 years. Yeah, I thought we heard.
Exactly. So my point, KJ, is that you should give me some love for raising that issue because virtually nobody has. 4 years. She referred to Donald Trump as illegitimate for 4 years. To the point where, as I said before, 66% of Democrats believe that the Russians, quote, changed vote tallies, close quote, in order for Donald Trump to win. Zero evidence a single vote tally was changed, according to the 1,000-page Senate report. And the Senate report reached no conclusion one way or the other about whether or not the Russian interference in 2016, quote, changed the outcome of the election, close quote. But 78% of Democrats, according to Gallup, a very respected poll, 78% of Democrats believe the Russian interference, quote, changed the outcome of the election, close quote. So I said to these reporters every time, a greater percentage of Democrats believe 2016 was stolen, in part because of the quote-unquote big lie pushed by Hillary, than Republicans who believe the same thing about 2020. And they never wrote one word about it. Well, Hillary supporters didn't storm the Capitol on January 6th. It's because Hillary wasn't president on January 6th. But don't give me this stuff about Hillary supporters were not violent. When Donald Trump got elected in November 2016, violent protests all over the country. And when Donald Trump was inaugurated, January of 2017, 200 people arrested in D.C. for violent protests. And Hillary did join a lawsuit to overturn the election in 2016. All of which I said, and not a single reporter wrote one word about it, KJ. So give me some love on that. Now, have you tried the 3-week quick start? Only $19.95. That is less than $1 a day to see if we can get you out of pain. After that, well, less than the cost of a cup of coffee to stay out of pain. Over 70% of those who order the 3-Way Quick Start go on to order more. The docs who formulated Relief Factor selected the 4 best ingredients, each of which are 100% drug-free, to deal with pain from a different metabolic pathway. So if you've got back, shoulder, neck, hip, foot, knee pain from exercise, or just getting older, consider ordering the 3-Week Quick Start. Again, still discounted to only $19.95. Just go to relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com, or call 800-500-8384. That's 800-500-8384.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
He is America. Captain America's trying, but nah, not so much. It's Superman. That's why kids have loved him. Adults have loved. When I saw Superman, I was, 8 years old, and I saw Christopher Reeve. You believed a man could fly. And I wanted to be an American, and now I am. But they've killed it. They killed James Bond in the new movie. Sorry, guys, spoilers. I've seen it. It's crap. Don't waste your time. They killed James Bond. Dead. Gone. Because I guess what? He was too sexy? Too toxic in his masculinity? Gone!
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
When there is a clash on the left between separate preferred activist groups, who gets preference? Who wins? Now, on the left, they have a hierarchy. Not any different than a hierarchy that you would have in any sort of organization. You see, when the left has a moment of disagreement or conflict, it is very important to realize that there is a structure of what matters more than something else.
Network.
Larry Elders, first-time caller. I appreciate everything you did, and I was rooting for you. I am a resident of Florida working in California, and I have not seen such an abysmal hellhole as California. I grew up in Southern California, and this is nothing like what I saw. Thank you.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. Sounds very similar to what the former mayor of L.A. said, Antonio Villaraigosa.
I was born and raised here. I've lived here my entire life. I've never seen this town so dirty. I've never seen crime go up so quickly in the last year. I think a 39% increase in homicides. The spread of homelessness and the increase of homelessness all throughout the city. I think there's a lack of urgency, a lack of clear leadership in this town right now.
Yeah, but Trump.
I think to many it feels like Rome is burning. I shine shoes on 7th and Broadway and sometimes on 5th and Broadway. I know Broadway and downtown, and I remember it when we left in 2013. It was booming, and we're going to have to do something. Humane, yes. But something to address the level of homelessness, to build the housing that we need, to address the zoning and CEQA changes that are necessary to be able to do this, more expeditiously and for less money, and do it quickly.
Yeah, but Trump. And again, Gavin Newsom's campaign manager bragged. Article about it yesterday. We turned this into a referendum on Trump. Had a picture of me standing next to Trump, both of our thumbs up. By the way, I took a picture standing next to Mike Pence. They didn't use that one. I've never seen it so dirty. He said homelessness is up. Of course, he didn't say that until after the recall election was over. Now, we would come back. More than 16,000 migrants who tested positive for COVID-19 have been released into the country. The Biden administration has not mandated that any of the migrants be vaccinated before their release. And nearly 12,000 of them are between the ages of 18 and 40. 11,800 were male. And Ted Cruz has a idea about where these migrants ought to be released. He's introducing a bill. I'll talk about that in just a few minutes. And your calls, 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. Do not leave town.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
That's kind of my shtick. Traveling the country, going to high school and college campuses, talking about how we need to properly educate young people about American history, civics, the development of the character, understanding how parents should have a primary role in their children's education, trying to have young people understand that there is objective truth, educate them about metaphysics and a transcendent order and meaning. These are things that I've been warning about for years, and I don't want to say that I was ignored. That would not be fair. Conservative base always took it seriously. People considered it to be a top 10 issue.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
I also have a view that the withdrawal of those forces would lead inevitably to the collapse of the Afghan military forces and eventually the Afghan government.
Well, you were right, and it took 11 days for the Taliban to take over Afghanistan. Have you seen some of the images coming out of Afghanistan, by the way? They're real pleasant. Bodies being hung from overpasses, people being executed in the street, an Afghan soldier led out into the street and just shot dead. The Taliban walking around with these giant whips and they're hitting women over the backs. Here's Secretary Austin also contradicting Biden and exposing Joe Biden for the bald-faced lie, the bald-faced lie he told the American people.
It's a simple question, Secretary Austin. He said no senior military leader advised him to leave a small troop presence behind. Is that true or not? Did these officer and General Miller's recommendations get to the president personally?
Their input was received by the president and considered by the president for sure. In terms of what they specifically recommended, Senator, as they just said, they're not going to provide what they recommended in confidence.
What a crap storm. What a crap show. Senator Josh Hawley put it best. Thank goodness for people like Josh Hawley and Marsha Blackburn and Dan Sullivan. The Republicans were certainly on fire yesterday in holding these failed commanders to have some sort of at least a public accountability.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Women are born ignorant of male sexual nature. It's not their fault. We're so different from women. There's no there's no fault here, but it is the fault of a society that doesn't teach them that. And society always did, but not since the 60s, because they wanted to believe men and women are basically the same. So I'm curious, are you a religious home?
Yes, we are religious.
Right. So here's my theory. Religious Americans are less naive than secular Americans.
I like that theory. I concur because we speak of evil.
That's right.
And we speak of wrongdoing. Yes.
Exactly right. You're a joy. You're in Fort Worth. I don't blame you. I hope we meet one day. And your husband should give me a couple of cigars. There's no question about that. Isn't it interesting, folks? Do you know who probably the most ignorant women in America are about men? Women who get PhDs in the social sciences. I would say that a woman who got a PhD in gender studies or in sociology or anthropology knows less about men than a high school dropout from a Christian home. And they're the people teaching your kids.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
$85 billion worth of equipment. The entire budget, military budget of Russia for a year is $50 billion.
Wow.
And we left $85 billion worth of equipment in the hands of the Taliban.
Yeah, what do you make of that, Congressman Gallagher?
Well, I do think it is clear that the Taliban violated the Doha Agreement. When I questioned General McKenzie, the CENTCOM commander, on this very point, and asked him whether the attack on Fox Chapman violated the Doha Agreement, he remarkably and astoundingly to me said no, it did not, which is crazy. I think it was a clear agreement. The other interesting thing that came out in my questioning of McKenzie is he confirmed the Washington Post report that the Taliban came to him and asked if we wanted to secure all of Kabul and not just the airport. And he didn't think that was significant enough to ensure that it got reported up the chain of command to the president himself. To me, that is a massive failure. I mean, that is something the president needed to know to influence his decision-making. And then finally, Hugh, we learned that the Taliban unit that was providing security around the Kabul airport at the time of the suicide bombing that killed 13 of our troops was a unit called Badri 313, which is the Taliban unit that specializes in suicide bombing. So this whole thing was a preventable fiasco because of the decisions that the Biden administration made. And for them to say they were bound by the Trump Doha agreement, I think does not hold water for precisely the reasons that the former president laid out.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. There's no doubt about it. America is in the middle of a culture war. The battle between left and right is real. One side believes in American greatness. The other wants to tear it down. The Salem Radio Network and the Salem Podcast Network is looking for a few warriors who are already fighting this war. This is your chance to nominate a person worthy of the honor of being Salem's Culture Warrior of 2021. Go to this show's website and click on the banner. Help us select Salem's Culture Warrior of the Year.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. I have been meaning to say since I came back on Monday that a gentleman in Sacramento on Sunday named Gary should be acknowledged for having given me some parting gifts. I got a couple of albums. Remember those things called albums? From a group called the El Dorados. I'm yet to transfer those on a format we can play for you, but we'll do that. They're a doo-wop group. And he also gave me a number of CDs. He also gave me a beautiful card. Dear Larry, on your memorial radio program dedicated to your brother Kirk, I was very happy to hear what an Elvis fan he was. Me too, along with millions of others, he says. I am a member of the rock and roll generation. I was 14 years old in 1956, Elvis's most explosive year. Did Kirk ever get to Graceland, especially for Elvis Week in August? I missed giving you these things last time you were here in Rockland, so I'm giving them to you now from myself and for your many fans and listeners in the Sacramento area, signed Gary, in memory of your brother Kirk. So if Gary is not listening, I'm sure many of you know who Gary is. Please tell him that I acknowledge that he gave me these gifts and how much I appreciate it. No, my brother never did get to Graceland, but his wife did. I don't know why they weren't together that day, but Trista went to Graceland. And when she was there, she said she even saw Elvis. He was upstairs as they were going through his house. Nor did my brother ever see Elvis in concert. I did, in Las Vegas. And I used to rib him about that. I said, Kirk, you're a big Elvis fan. How many of us have actually seen Elvis perform live? He never did. Anyway, Gary, thank you so much for that. God bless. One more thing about this election being stolen in 2020. I was asked that, as I said over and over again, please tell me the relevance of that regarding this election. And by the way, I was reamed by the media because briefly on the electelder.com website before the election, I think a day before the election, it said something to the effect of, we lost the election, it's because the election was stolen. I'm paraphrasing. I didn't put that language up there. Vendor did. We promptly took it down. It shouldn't have been up there. But I wasn't conceding, nor was I saying that I lost because of the election having been stolen. Were there some shenanigans? We know there were. There were some reports on local news about some guy having 300 ballots in his car, about a bunch of people, all of whom appear to be Republicans, who showed up on election day and they were told they'd already voted. I'm not saying there was some sort of conspiracy, but don't tell me things did not go wrong. But again, why this became an issue? Because the media conspired. I don't mean they had meetings. I don't mean they sent emails. Conspired with my opponent to divert attention from the issues because they wanted him to remain in office. Was the 2020 election stolen? Do you believe 2020 was stolen? And I said, just one time. Just one time. I'd like you to ask my opponent, Gavin Newsom, if he believes 2016 was stolen. Just one time. And if he doesn't believe it was stolen, please ask him whether Hillary's social media platform should be shut down, the way Trump's were. Trump's were shut down after January 6th, the so-called insurrection. By the way, you've lost me at the word insurrection. But Hillary, for 4 years and counting, to whoever would listen, referred to Donald Trump as illegitimate and said the election was stolen. Can you imagine had Donald Trump referred to Barack Obama as illegitimate and said 2008, 2012 had been stolen? Are you kidding me? She said it over and over and over again, and you guys didn't say squat. Now, Chris Cillizza, who is politics editor at CNN, went nuts over a poll that showed 76% of Republicans believe the 2020 election was one of, quote, widespread voter fraud, close quote. There hasn't been a 1,000-page investigation about 2020, by the way. But that 76% is a lower percentage than the 78% of Democrats who believe the Russian interference, quote, changed the outcome of the election, end of quote, even though the 1,000-page Senate report reached no such conclusion. Why hasn't Hillary had her social media platform shut down? Why hasn't anybody raised this? And if you're going to ask me about 2020, why don't you report what I asked you about 2016? Why didn't you ask Gavin Newsom if he thought 2016 was stolen? Hillary certainly does. To the point where, again, 2/3 of Democrats falsely, incorrectly believe that the Russians changed vote tallies. Again, Senate report, the Russians tried, don't get me wrong, but they failed to change a single vote tally. Talk about believers in conspiracy theories. 66% of Democrats, however, believe that they did. But Donald Trump is purveying the big lie, and anybody who believes that the 2020 election was rigged, as Molly Hemingway puts it, is a brain-dead conspiracy theory, knuckle-dragging, brain-dead conspiracy theorist. Talk about double standards. Now, the former coach of the New York Knicks, Jeff Van Gundy, has slammed Kyrie Irving, the NBA superstar who refuses to be vaccinated. Quote, sometimes common sense is in short supply, end of quote. Mr. Van Gundy, how much damage do you think LeBron James has done by suggesting the police engage in systemic racism against black people? Something that has caused the police to pull back, to engage in passive policing. Fewer stops, fewer arrests, crime up, often dramatically, in places like New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Oakland, Newark, and elsewhere. Why? Well, if you're going to accuse me of engaging in systemic racism, why in the world should I do anything other than respond to radio calls? Did you ever suggest that LeBron James lacked common sense because the studies show the opposite of what he's saying? Of course not. Are you kidding? Spike Lee, a regular feature at New York Knicks games, has even done commercials with the NBA, speculated that George W. Bush blew up levees during Hurricane Katrina. Did you ever suggest that Spike Lee was lacking common sense? Of course not. Now, some 18,000 so-called migrants have been released into the interior, many of whom are positive for COVID-19. By the way, Joe Biden is not mandating that they be tested, by the way. So Ted Cruz has a proposition.
You know, you see rich Democrats basically saying to Texas and the rest of the country, oh, you silly people, you shouldn't worry about this. And they say this while they're at their fancy enclaves, while they're whining and dining. Well, I've introduced legislation today in the Senate. It's called the Stop the Surge Act, and it creates new ports of entry for these 2 million illegal immigrants. So instead of having 15,000 Haitians under a bridge in Del Rio, Texas, Del Rio just has 35,000 people, its population. That's half the city coming in one day in Del Rio. Well, what my bill does is it designates new ports of entry, like Palo Alto, California, like St. Helena, California, like Yountsville, California, like Greenwich, Connecticut, like Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, like Cambridge, Massachusetts, Martha's Vineyard, Block Island, Rhode Island, Governor's Island, Scarsdale, New York, North Hero, Vermont, and Nantucket. So rich Democrats can be sitting there and suddenly see 10, 20, 30, 50,000 illegal immigrants like we're seeing in Texas on a daily basis.
I'm Larry Elder.
This is why we're fighting
for the soul of America. You should be able to share ideas without fear of being fired from your job or shouted down.
You are not to be heard. This is one of the few things we have no precedent for in the United States.
You have the right to remain silent.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
How 1 million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans.
Go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
You can stop an earthquake. Doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Judge Thomas, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
57 Muslim states in the world, 1 Jewish state.
Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
There's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
I think this family can pick you up every time you fall.
Every time I take one step forward.
When Wright came in this morning, he wants to fight you.
No one expected this out of him.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
I have never seen in my life the orchestrated hatred to a group of Americans as I am seeing now. It's orchestrated hatred. You are allowed to hate the unvaccinated. Even if the unvaccinated had COVID already, and there is no scientific reason whatsoever for them to take as minimal a risk as it is the vaccine. You are to hate these people. They are killers. They are killing you and themselves. This is this piece of crap governor of California on television.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. There's no doubt about it. America is in the middle of a culture war. The battle between left and right is real. One side believes in American greatness. The other wants to tear it down. The Salem Radio Network and the Salem Podcast Network is looking for a few warriors who are already fighting this war. This is your chance to nominate a person worthy of the honor of being Salem's Culture Warrior of 2021. Go to this show's website and click on the banner. Help us select Salem's Culture Warrior of the Year.
Our elections are the wellspring of democracy and everything that comes with it. Unfortunately, Donald Trump's big lie is spreading like a cancer among Republicans. Here's a chance for bipartisanship to repair that damage. And they know.
Trump knows he's an illegitimate president who got illegitimate foreign help. He knows he's an illegitimate president. He knows that there were a bunch of different reasons why the election turned out the way it did. You can run the best campaign. You can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you. I know that he knows that this wasn't on the level.
Why do you think the president is going to such great lengths to essentially prove that he beat you?
Because he knows he didn't. He knows he's an illegitimate president. I do think that he knows that he's an illegitimate president.
You see, I'm here to tell you that just because you win doesn't mean you're won. We've got folks who are ready to take back what they think is theirs, but they are not entitled to our progress. They are not entitled to our justice. They are not entitled to our votes. But either we use them or we lose them. I come from a state where I was not entitled to become the governor.
Our elections are the wellspring of democracy and everything that comes with it. Unfortunately, Donald Trump's big lie is spreading like a cancer among Republicans.
You can have the election stolen from you.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. Past year has been a tough one for Americans. Lockdown, school closings, and now the rising costs of everything. Good thing that Biden says that inflation is going to be transitory. It's been an especially hard time for the 30 million American small business owners and the 60 million people they employ. Now small business faces new hurdles being created by their own government, none worse than the tax increases proposed in Washington, D.C. of nearly 30% increase on already struggling small businesses. There are also calls to change labor laws to favor union bosses and increase regulations. It's not just bad policy. What D.C. lawmakers are guilty of is bad faith. One group is working hard to fight this war against small business, the great people at Job Creators Network, founded to fight for small businesses and to defend free enterprise. And they're looking for a few good men and women to build an army of small business advocates across our great country. Their advocacy program will train you up to be a voice for positive change in your community, state, and country. It'll also be a great way to network with like-minded business owners. To find out how to join JNC's growing army of small business owners, just go to jobcreatorsnetwork.com. That's jobcreatorsnetwork.com. According to Breitbart, there are 16,000 so-called migrants who've tested positive for COVID-19. Keep in mind, these are just the ones who've been tested. The Biden administration does not mandate that any of them be vaccinated before their release. And these figures only include those that were tested by ICE. 16,000 migrants tested, released into the interior. And Joe Biden wants businesses to mandate, if you have more than 100 employees, to mandate that they be vaccinated. After having said back in, December of last year, I wouldn't have a vaccine mandate. Are you kidding me? It's just
mandatory. No, I don't think it should be mandatory. I wouldn't demand to be mandatory, but I would do everything in my power. Just like I don't think masks have to be made mandatory nationwide. I'll do everything in my power as the President of the United States to encourage people to do the right thing, and when they do it, demonstrate that it matters. That's why I said in my inaugural speech, I'm going to ask people to commit for 100 days.
All right, so that was just so then. By the way, Biden's Customs Border Patrol nominee refuses to say that there is a border crisis. Does it really even matter what you call it?
Mr. Magnus, I'd like to start off with a yes or no question. Do you believe we have a crisis at the southern border? Yes or no?
Senator, I'm not sure, does it really matter whether we call it a major challenge, a crisis, a big problem? I think
it speaks to a level of urgency and seriousness of purpose and an understanding of the gravity of the situation. I mean, presumably one would answer the call to serve in this position because you understand the importance at this moment in history of being commissioner of CBP. So do we have a crisis at the border? Yes or no?
Senator, let me assure you that no one believes there is greater urgency to this matter than I do. I have been at the southern border.
So it's urgent. I've heard the characterization urgent strikes the common ear as less than a crisis. Are you saying there's not a crisis at the border?
Senator, I don't think speak to urgent as less serious at all. In fact,
is there a crisis or is there not a crisis at the border?
Senator, I would say that my highest priority is going to...
I didn't ask your priority. I asked to characterize the situation on the border. Is there a crisis at the border? You've been nominated to serve as commissioner to the Customs and Border Patrol agency at a time that I regard as a crisis. Are you saying there is not a crisis?
Senator, what I'm certainly trying to convey is how serious I take what's happening at the border and the amount of work that I want to put into addressing it.
Noted.
And of course he's not going to call it a crisis because his boss, Joe Biden, is not calling it a crisis. This is what former New York Times reporter Barry Weiss was talking about when she told Brian Stelter, "We've gone crazy. You can't call what's going on the borders a crisis."
You're right. There are tens of millions of Americans who aren't on the hard left or the hard right who feel the world has gone mad. So in what ways has the world gone mad?
Well, when you have the chief reporter on the beat of COVID for the New York Times talking about how questioning or pursuing the question of the lab leak is racist, the world has gone mad. When you're not able to say out loud and in public that there are differences between men and women, the world has gone mad. When we're not allowed to acknowledge that rioting is rioting and it is bad, and that silence is not violence, but violence is violence, the world has gone mad. When we're not able to say that Hunter Biden's laptop is a story worth pursuing, the world has gone mad. When, in the name of progress, young school children, as young as kindergarten, are being separated in public schools because of their race, and that is called progress rather than segregation, the world has gone mad. There are dozens of examples that I could share with you and with your viewers. And you often
say
everyone
aloud.
Sort of knows this, and
you say we're not allowed, we're not able. Who's the people stopping the conversation? Who are they?
People that work at networks, frankly, like the one I'm speaking on right now.
People like you. Dan Bongino, who works for Cumulus Radio, says he's not going to take the vaccine.
Imagine the countless number of individuals trying to explain to these companies. Ever thought of that? The countless numbers of moms and dads who are sitting at some kitchen table explaining to their kids how they may have to move out, how daddy doesn't have a job because a bunch of people in a C-suite thought it'd be a good idea to sit around and play pretend Dr. Fauci for a moment and mandate people jam something in their bodies that they don't want to take?
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. Larry Elder.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Boy, the state of Florida just fined Leon County $3.5 million because they fired 14 employees.
Coercion is just totally wrong. I think it's destroying trust in public health to the extent that there was still trust left over after all the stuff that's been done. But I think it's really, really negative, and I think you're going to end up driving people away.
Governor DeSantis makes a great observation about the way the mandate is driving people in the other direction. And that's why companies have got to stop the mandates. This just has to stop. This isn't working. You cannot fire people over a vaccine.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
He is America. Captain America's trying, but not so much. It's Superman. That's why kids have loved him. Adults have loved. When I saw Superman, I was 8 years old, and I saw Christopher Reeve. You believed a man could fly. And I wanted to be an American, and now I am. But they've killed it. They killed James Bond in the new movie. Sorry, guys, spoilers. I've seen it. It's crap. Don't waste your time. They killed James Bond. Dead. Gone. Because I guess what? He was too sexy? Too toxic in his masculinity? Gone! And now they've done it with the Superman franchise. I posted this yesterday. Turned my Instagram on fire. The image of Superman in a homosexual kiss. Because DC Comics, I guess they don't want to sell comics. And now the new Superman, the son of Kal-El, is going to come out as gay. Or as Jeff pointed out, I guess he's bi, right? Whatever, who cares? But here's the bottom line. This is beautiful. I hope Media Matters is writing this one up. Hey, Zachy Poo, are you typing? How many homosexuals, how many gay people are there in society? 1%, 1.5%. Let's be generous. Let's double it. 3%! 3% of America are gay. And the gay people I know, they don't rub it in your face.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. There's no doubt about it. America is in the middle of a culture war. The battle between left and right is real. One side believes in American greatness. The other wants to tear it down. The Salem Radio Network and the Salem Podcast Network is looking for a few warriors who are already fighting this war. This is your chance to nominate a person worthy of the honor of being Salem's Culture Warrior of 2021. Go to this show's website and click on the banner. Help us select Salem's Culture Warrior of the Year.
You ever put yourself in that role? You ever put yourself at that kitchen table with mom and dad telling their kids that? Imagine how the kids respond, that fear they got to live with. You know, I grew up without a lot of money. My mom used to make bologna sandwiches for dinner. And when the bologna was no good, you'd cook it and you'd make it good right quick, right? I'm not leaving any of those guys behind. You can have me or you can have the mandate. But you can't have both of us.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. The show wants to honor those in American life who are standing up for what we all believe in. We know there's a culture war going on around us, but some people rise up and become culture warriors. You can nominate one of these people as the 2021 Salem Culture Warrior of the Year. Just go to LarryElder.com, click on the Culture Warrior banner to nominate somebody today. Let's give praise and encouragement to these culture warriors. Patty is in Woodstock, Georgia. Patty, you're on the Larry Elder Show. Thank you so much for calling. I appreciate it.
Oh, hi. I just wanted to say that in looking at how the race went, the Californians split their vote. They didn't coalesce behind you or whoever was a person who could really win, and you were the national character. And I don't know, nobody even talked about the Republican Party helping you or coming up with a strategy that they used in the state.
Well, Patty, thank you very much for the call. Let me tell you a little bit about that. I don't know if you heard my show on Monday, but before I entered the race, my campaign and I decided that we would not say a single negative thing about any of my Republican rivals. Not because I thought I was going to be the front runner, which, by the way, I became right away, which surprised me. Not because I thought I was going to go wire to wire, meaning as soon as I got into the race, I became the front runner and my lead only increased, but because I felt it was foolish, stupid for the Republicans to concentrate on anybody other than Gavin Newsom. Because, Patty, this is a two-step deal. The first step is 50% plus one of the voters have to vote to recall Gavin Newsom. And then if he's recalled, whoever gets the greatest number of votes to succeed him becomes the next governor. But you don't get to door number 2 unless you get to door number 1. So I thought the smart thing is for none of the Republicans to say anything negative about any of the other Republicans, to adhere to what Ronald Reagan called the 11th commandment. Because again, if 50% plus 1 do not vote to recall Gavin Newsom, we're having an exercise in futility. So when I was on television, one of my first interviews, the interview is going along, and it's not a combative interview, but the interviewer clearly is not somebody who's going to support me. And near the end of it, he said, "I like to play a lightning round. I'm going to give you a name, and then you respond." And he said, "John Cox." Now, John Cox is the man against whom Gavin Newsom ran when Newsom was elected. And John Cox lost by, I think it was 23 points. And I said, "I'm sorry, I'm not going to play. The issue is not John Cox. The issue is Gavin Newsom. The issue is," and then I went through the litany. Crime, going up, overseeing the release of nearly 20,000 convicted felons early, many of whom were convicted of violent offenses. Homelessness, substantial increase. Wall Street Journal says that California has 50% of the nation's homelessness. The way this man shut down the economy in a more severe way than did any of the other 49 governors. That we've only recovered about 50% of our jobs pre-pandemic, as opposed to 2/3 recovered nationwide. That he was at that French Laundry restaurant with the very people that drafted the mandates. They were not following the mandates. They were not wearing masks. They were not engaging in social distancing. That his own kids enjoyed in-person private education, denying in-person public education for the 80% of the students in our public school system that are black and brown. Again, I only mention their race because people like Gavin Newsom pride themselves on caring about black and brown and Asian American people. And I refuse to play his game. Now, had the other Republicans said, when asked about moi, well, I'm not here to talk about Larry Elder. I'm here to talk about the horrible record that Gavin Newsom has presided over the last 2 years, which is why over 2 million people signed a petition when they only needed 1.6 legitimate signatures. A good 1/3 of them were independents and Democrats who voted for him just 2 years earlier. This is a man who does not want choice in public schools, even though black and brown parents do, knowing full well that the worst teachers, the worst principals, the worst bureaucrats end up in urban schools. They've got the worst outcomes. Our reading and math scores are near the bottom of all 50 states. That's what I'm here to talk about. That's what they should have said. And had all of them said that, I'm not saying the recall effort would have been successful, but certainly the margin of defeat, in my opinion, would not have been as big as it is. That's what should have happened. That's not what happened. But anyway, thank you very much, Patty, for the call. I appreciate it. Now, the 3-week quick start is still discounted to only $19.95, you know. That is less than $1 a day to see if we can get you out of pain. Then after that, well, we're talking about less than the cost of a cup of coffee a day for you to stay out of pain. Over 70% of those who order the 3-week quick start go on to order more. If you've got back, shoulder, neck, hip, foot, knee pain from exercise, or just dealing with life, consider the 3-week quick start. The docs who formulated 4 ingredients, all 100% drug-free. ReliefFactor.com, 800-500-8384. ReliefFactor.com, 800-500-8384.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
This White House has absolutely no idea what is happening in America. It is completely divorced from reality, devoid of any understanding. And you know, they always say that the organization reflects the leader. Well, they've got a feckless, pathetic, completely out-to-lunch leader, and that has completely permeated this White House, if you can call it that.
So at this point, it's hard to imagine how much worse the situation could get. In that case, the question I always return to, and you are a guy who's worked on so many campaigns, not just in the White House, your political sense is fine-tuned. Is there not a point, if you look at the cargo ships off L.A., you look at the 2 million illegal aliens, you look at the 4 million people who resigned from their jobs last year, you look at the inflation, you look at everything to do with national security, with Afghanistan. Is there no point at which Biden becomes an albatross around the neck of the Democrats, or are they just too afraid to have the cackler in the Oval?
It's happened already. Look at Virginia.
Yeah.
Terry McAuliffe is losing to Youngkin in a race where Biden won by 10 points.
But hang on, Boris.
Okay?
Boris, it's not just that, Youngkin has a shot. Did you ever think that Terry McAuliffe would actually publicly state that the Democrat president is the reason that he might lose Virginia?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. There's no doubt about it. America is in the middle of a culture war. The battle between left and right is real. One side believes in American greatness. The other wants to tear it down. The Salem Radio Network and the Salem Podcast Network is looking for a few warriors who are already fighting this war. This is your chance to nominate a person worthy of the honor of being Salem's Culture Warrior of 2021. Go to this show's website and click on the banner. Help us select Salem's Culture Warrior of the Year.
Larry, Mike in Louisville. About the supply chain problem, I'm a local businessman in Louisville, Kentucky, and I have been dealing with this. The president told us it was a couple weeks now. I'm telling you, it's like 4 or 5 months now. My suppliers are out of critical components almost weekly, and they can't get them. They don't have the help to deliver them, or their suppliers don't have the help to deliver them to them, or we can't get them off the boat from China. It has nothing to do with China. It's all about the American supply chain, and President Biden doesn't want to admit that. That's all I got. Thanks.
Hi, Larry. Longtime listener. Welcome back. Missed you, but your stand-in was just as good as you, just not you. As far as the truckers going, it's the law that the Democrats put in that diesel trucks have to be under a certain standard, and so truckers had to get rid of their older trucks and invest in new trucks, new diesel trucks, in order to ship containers around the country. And this has started in 2020 and now affecting us in 2021. All right, Larry, thank you. Have a great day, and welcome back.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. We addressed that issue a little bit earlier. I think it's a much smaller problem than I think you think it is. But a much bigger problem, we'll talk about this tomorrow, are the union rules. Joe Biden says that these terminals should be operating 24/7. Well, we'll talk about why they've been operating so inefficiently, and they largely have to do with union rules. All of that we'll get into tomorrow. Now, I post new excerpts of the show on YouTube every day. Just go to youtube.com/The Larry Elder Show Radio. You can also watch the show there. Also, right on the front page at my website, LarryElder.com, you can read my weekly column, get highlights of the shows that you can easily post to Facebook and Twitter to spread the word. You can also subscribe to the podcast of this show and listen to the show whenever you want. And by the way, you can try the Larry Elder Show podcast for just 99 cents. Everything you need is an El Dorado, up to date at LarryElder.com. And while you're at LarryElder.com, please see the link to my YouTube channel. Again, youtube.com/The Larry Elder Show Radio, as well as Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and subscribe to all of them. Richard is in Rialto, California. Richard, you're on the Larry Elder Show.
How you doing? I missed you. Welcome back.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate it.
Hey, I wanted to talk about this, just actually talk about COVID being the number one killer of law enforcement. I looked at the National Law Enforcement Memorial Fund. They did a little study here for 10 years, 2011 through 2020, all of the deaths associated with law enforcement. The number one killer, gunshots. Number two, job-related illness. And number three, automobile crashes. Now, I want to focus on the job-related. From 2011 to 2020, annually, numbers are putting up 34, 50s, 60s, 70s. In 2020, that dropped all the way down to 21, the lowest it's been in 9 years, and they added a brand new category called COVID-related deaths. I'm suspecting that maybe some of those job-related deaths are being hit under this new COVID-related category. And the reason I think that is, I know this is kind of anecdotal. We have about 140 people here. About 25 to 30% of us have already recovered from COVID. Most unvaccinated, a few vaccinated, and we haven't lost a single person. And when we do get sick, we go to the doctor, and the doctor does not do anything but send you home with the recommendation to stay hydrated. No treatment whatsoever.
Richard, why do you suppose there was a drop in officers being shot, being killed in the line of duty last year?
Personal humble opinion is not being as proactive.
That's what I think, too.
Being reactive instead of proactive. And that's because of all the rules and regs putting down that they put down on us and not being able to do a job. We did get some good news, though. If you don't know it, there's Supreme Court ruled on this, not to change gears, but the qualified immunity. The Ninth Circuit said that we don't get qualified immunity. The Ninth Circuit was overruled by the Supreme Court, and a new ruling that came down that said, no, we do still have qualified immunity. So that's a little bit of shining light. But the rest of the rules and regs that we're getting from Sacramento are the main, and not just California, but across the nation. The defunding and the mandatory vaccinations and everything else, we're just in a proactive state now.
Well, Richard, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. By the way, killings of unarmed whites and blacks are also down dramatically over the last year. Same reason, less proactive policing. Of course, crime is up. Phil is in University Heights, Ohio. Phil, you're on the Larry Elder Show. Thank you so much for calling.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well.
I have to tell you how much I admire what you did and things that you've gone through. I'm here in a small city in University Heights, and I'm getting a little bit of what Trump had to pay attention to and some of the same experiences. It's unbelievable.
So, I'm listening.
Yeah. I had an interview with the newspaper, the main newspaper in the Cleveland area, and I was trying to state the issues because the only reason I'm running is to try and address the issues that are placating this city. And I started to talk about it, and she cuts me off in the middle and says, no, you can't do that, so let's go on to something else. I can't address these issues. It was just like Chris Wallace and President Trump.
Well, I mentioned that, Phil, when I was running. I'm running, and what do you think the election was stolen? What do you think about the Texas heartbeat law? You've written negatively about the minimum wage. What? Have you seen crime going up? Have you seen homelessness going up? Are you seeing a greater number of people living under the bridge, pitching tents? Do you care about the decline in the quality of public education here in California? Do you care about the fact that people are leaving the state for the very first time in the state's 170-year history, and more businesses have left this year than have left all of last year? Do you care about any of that? Why are you asking me about this? Because they are in bed with my opponent. They want him to stay in office. So let's not talk about the issues. Let's call this a Republican takeover. Now, the best secret is out. Like me, hundreds of thousands of people have said goodbye to their overpriced Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile plans and switched to Pure Talk. That's because you get the same great coverage on the same great 5G network as one of the big guys, but for about half the cost. The average family is saving over $800 a year, so what are you waiting for? You can keep your number and keep your phone, or get huge discounts on the latest iPhones and Androids. Get unlimited talk, text, and 6 gigs of data for just $30 a month. Or if you want unlimited data, you can still save a fortune. Look, I'm a Pure Talk customer. I like the way they treat their customers. Plus, they have a 30-day risk-free guarantee, so you literally have nothing to lose. From your cell phone, dial pound 250 and say Larry Elder, and you'll save 50% off your first month. That's pound 250, say Larry Elder, pound 250, and say Larry Elder, because Pure Talk is simply smarter wireless.
This is why we're fighting for the soul of America.
You should be able to share ideas without fear of being fired from your job or shouted down.
You are not to be heard. This is one of the few things we have no precedent for in the United States.
You have the right to remain silent.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
How 1 million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans.
Go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
You can stop an earthquake. Doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Judge Thomas, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Larry, Joe, and Prescott Valley, very happy to have you back on the air. Look, we donated to you from Arizona here to your campaign because we believe in you so much. Larry, California is dead. It's a dead state. The people are stuck on stupid. What is happening out there is demonic. And it's the only word I can come up with. It's not that people refuse to see what's going on. The fact of the matter is they can't. There's a demonic veil over their eyes, and they can't see it. Just look at Nancy Pelosi. She can't write or sign a bill without funding abortion because she enjoys killing babies. Period. End of story. It's demonic. Yeah, there are good people out there like Jack Hibbs. I used to go to Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills, too. And they're making a difference for some people, but they're not going to change the state. The state is dead. It's demonic, and I'm encouraging people to get out. Arizona's just reduced its state tax from 9% to 4.5%. It's a wonderful place to be, but keep it red. God bless you, Larry.
888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. I am Larry Elder. We are ReliefFactor.com studio. Tomorrow I'm going to talk to you about a secret tape that was recorded at an elementary school in Ohio. in which the teacher was talking about critical race theory to sixth graders. Speaking of California, In-N-Out Burger is refusing to enforce the vaccine mandates. They are allowing their customers to enter the restaurant without verifying their vaccination status in San Francisco since late last September. The city has a indoor vaccine mandates for businesses, including restaurants, went into effect on August the 20th. And In-N-Out is acknowledging that they're violating this. But they've called the government vaccination requirements intrusive, improper, offensive. The In-N-Out chief legal and business officer said in a statement, quote, "We refuse to become the vaccination police for any government. It is unreasonable, invasive, and unsafe to force our restaurant associates to segregate customers into those who may be served and those who may not be, whether based on the documentation they carry or any other reason," end of quote. And it appears that the In-N-Out restaurants in the Bay Area are now being asked to cease all operations because of the threat it poses to public health. All of that and more. Chicago, by the way, has begun placing police officers on no-pay leave status, those who are refusing to comply with the department's COVID vaccination mandate. I am Larry Elder. Let's do this again tomorrow. I will be checking attendance. Salud.